So for most people, it was like, what the heck is this?
Hello, everybody. This is Value Tokenized with Masha and Zenia. So, right now, a lot of people are talking about tokenization of capital markets, tokenization of finance. But if we think about it, this is only such a small industry compared to what people are interested in. And this is music, arts, games, entertainment, and different,
Fashion.
different kinds of, yeah. And so, if we tokenize this, we have a giant new application for tokenization. Fabian Vogesteller, known as creator of ERC20 standard, today telling us what they are creating at Laxo, what is community tokenization, and what potential does it open for blockchain. Hi, Fabian. Thank you very much for joining us here at Value Tokenized. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And so right now, the majority of interest in blockchain space is focused on tokenization, but most of people are still looking at it from the perspective of financial markets. Instead, you're focused on community tokenization. Can you share why and what does this concept mean?
So actually, there's a few points here. I mean, yes, if you look back in what happened with ERC20 and all the tokenization, all the ICOs, most of the things were focused around either apps and crowdfunding and basically funding mechanisms. So what we really have seen here a lot is basically all kind of tokens around like crowdfunding actually and fundraising. That was like the most tokens we've seen in the last 3 years. The new talk is DeFi, and it's all about financial tokenization, which is a very regulated space. And the interesting thing is, when I proposed ERC20 back in the day, I kind of thought, okay, people will make like fun tokens, create their own tokens and community tokens, and we will have to see what kind of community behavior will come out of it. But most people thought, oh, great, I can now make a token, don't have to make a blockchain. Oh yeah, we can now make a token, integrate a token into our project and start a fundraising process, and that's exactly what happened. Once a few saw that succeeds, everybody started doing it. And that kind of led to the ICO bubble and also to the confusion of evaluation, where an app token was now seen as potentially high valuable like a blockchain. So they thought, oh, it can go to billions of dollars of value. So let's invest in all kind of tokens. And every token means 10x. Yeah. That's kind of a little bit the downside what happened with ERC20 and the ICOs, but at the same time was a whole learning for the space. But with the real tokenization, what we have in mind and what I have in mind is actually tokens around communities. I mean, tokens, or it's basically people's money, are really good at connecting people. Because if you have a token, it could be just a token for an interest, or a token around a brand, or a token around a star. That shows that I'm into that. And if I have somehow to earn them through a process, through like liking or posts or participating in events or going to places, it shows that I'm involved. So it's the perfect signal to show that I'm interested in something. And right now, the only way we have to do this in social media is likes, but likes are not weighted. You can like or not like, but you cannot like much and you cannot like less. Yeah. And tokens kind of give that ability. And at the same time, if you have blockchain and tokens, you have immediate global transactability, and you have the ability that everybody can controls his own things and can transfer it however he wishes. So it's independent of whatever issuer even, and that's kind of like a big deal. So because it's technically you're creating money, but it doesn't necessarily need to be money. It can be also just interest signaling, or it could be an achievement, or it could be just showing support for something. You could even have an AIDS badge coin you can collect by participating in rallies or whatever else. And I think we haven't even started seeing the real tokenization. It will completely like go across everything. And then you cannot even tell anymore where's the border between money and not money. What's now money? Is it money because somebody says it's money? I mean, people will make everything money on the end. I mean, everything will be either reputation, and there will be a very fluid line towards monetary value, because on the end, the thing we probably care the most is reputation, and that's something which is hard to gain.
Yeah.
And the result might be money, because you get good jobs, or you get like good deals, or people invest in you, or whatever else. But it's like a very connected thing. And on the end, what we really thrive to in life is to get reputation. And one way to do that is showing our interest, showing where we belong to, what we are interested in, also showing as a community what like we are interested in. And through this tokenization, through the actual tokenization, I think we will see in the next 3 years, you will very clearly see what people are into, how strong is each community, how many people participating, how much activity exists there. There will be whole economies built around just community, or sometimes even memes. And we have seen it with Dogecoin, right? But that's just kind of like one of the first examples. But there might be sneakerheads, and then we have coffee shops accepting sneaker coins, and then there's stores starting to accept this. And so what you have now is like a interest money, and money around interest and our communities and our whatever. And then you have also the brands and the influencers and the stars and the musicians, and all making their own token for whatever they are for, right? And that's kind of like gives a sense of transparency in these communities, which is right now totally opaque. I mean, totally, you have social media, you can like look for hashtags. That's the way of how you can measure interest in something. And it becomes now a lot more fluid, and it becomes a lot more transactable and economic. So far, we are really missing the economic layer on the internet. And I think that's coming through a backdoor in a fun way.
So, and you're defining like Luxa, your area of focus as fame. So it's fashion, arts, media, and entertainment. Can you explain why are you focusing on these? Is it because these are the areas people are usually most involved in? They're most interested
emotionally.
In, yeah.
So you can mainly describe it as lifestyle, and we are now defining it as fame. And interesting enough, if you look in fashion and art, media and entertainment, esports, whatever it might be, everything is fame here. And if you look at who's these people and who is this interest group, it's almost the same group of people. It's, in fact, if you go to social media and you check on Instagram, the people we have on Instagram, that is that group of people. It's a very specific audience, which so far barely cares about blockchain, doesn't use blockchain at all, and is not really is interested in communicating and participating in communities and being part or interested in something, showing off and all of these things, but it doesn't use blockchain at all. And in fact, what we have basically figured out, okay, there's no blockchain for that. There's no blockchain use cases. There are blockchain use cases going that direction. They're right now the outliers on Ethereum. They're like, okay, a bit of music things here and a bit of like a token, whatever here. And it's all in that kind of like edge direction. And in what we have found, and we have written a 120 pages blueprint for new creative economies, where we really go into detail into like this kind of community and why we think blockchain makes sense. And this is really just scratching the surface. And on the end, we will have a massive amount of use cases in there. If you give people the ability to create their own tokens in simple ways where the blockchain disappears, but the feature starts to is the one which is like standing in the front. When you are able to own the items you buy, and when we're talking about like fashion, for example, we're talking about high-end value items or collectibles. When it's about music or but being part of events or being part of like whatever new movement, that's kind of things which are really not ownable right now that easily. I mean, we have biker jackets with like badges, that's going all in that direction. It's just not digital, it's a very manual expression way. And moving, for example, we are starting strongly with fashion because we have a big network in fashion, and we're working and talking to a lot of brands. We have a very broad advisory board in the space, and it's interestingly the space which now really starts to get into fashion, into blockchain. So fashion gets into blockchain. It's starting to take on, and it's a lot more now about all the extended use cases, not just track and trace. And when you go into this, it's super exciting because first is people want to express, they want to do things. Second, people want to own and they want to show that they have the real deal. And they also are collectors. I mean, it's all about collection, basically. And if you give blockchain to this, you create the perfect layer. It's kind of like the perfect match, which obviously, like, it seems like nobody to see, right? It's like fashion and its uniqueness and blockchain is the perfect marriage. I have given a talk like January 2018 at the Fashion Tech Forum Berlin here, I think it was Fashion Tech Forum. And it was really talking about blockchain and how uniqueness in blockchain and in fashion is actually something which is a perfect match. And that was at the time when track and trace was the only thing people thought about. And it really, in the last months, started to big time take on. And everybody gets super interested. The brands get super interested. They realize that it's a market and it's important for people. We have another aspect coming, which is purely digital fashion items. The purely digital world is moving in. And, you know, if you look at, for example, Gucci, which gets super interesting for kids now because Fortnite's major player Ninja is like wearing Gucci. So now the kids wear like Gucci. Now Gucci comes to kids wear. Then you have the, like Fortnite, for example, making a bunch of like $3 billion pure profit selling digital items. CryptoKitties was in one signal as well. People realize, okay, there is markets, and these markets are the new markets, which at some point will completely outpace physical markets.
Yeah.
And VR is another aspect. I have my VR device here in the corner down there, hanging.
Yeah.
Kind of see it. So that's like another aspect which is really strongly coming. All of this, you want to own things, and you want to own things not everybody can have, and you want to own things that are limited, and you want to also own things that are expensive, which others maybe can't buy. I mean, it's on the end all about uniqueness and expression and status and all of these things. And this will live in the digital world as well. You don't make a difference there. And we see this, for example, with all the Twitch streamers and everything already. So if you start to combine this, and we are now see gaming and fashion really start to merge, which was before completely unbelievable. All of those are use cases that we actually start Luxo for. The Luxo blockchain as a public permissionless network is exactly meant for those kind of use cases. And nobody's speaking to that audience yet. Nobody's working on use cases in this direction dedicated. And nobody actually brought this whole space together. And that's the point of Luxo.
And what is your personal favorite use case for this? Maybe some particular example that you're most excited about.
I mean, I'm very excited about building applications which allows people to easily create their own tokens, drop them on their followers, see what people will make out of it. What will happen, you know, if people start doing that? I mean, how people will behave, you know. First, we'll probably collect a lot, and then you have an audience which is tokenized, and so now you can think of what to give them or what to do with them. I'm super interested in seeing that. The whole markets around purely digital items, digital fashion items and accessories and whatever, I'm super interested in see what kind of evaluations they will reach, and how then, you know, the moment you base everything on standards, and that's the biggest piece, not only that you come together on a common infrastructure, on a common blockchain, but now when you have specific standards, and we are starting progresses on standardization with big fashion groups and fashion brands and project in that space around NFT standards, specifically for that industry. And we are talking about real NFT standards. Most NFT standards we have are purely like 7-to-1. This is saying transferring a hash.
Yeah.
It's not enough to really create a whole industry or have a whole synergy around it, because transferring hash means nothing. You know, you have to define of how the asset looks like, where to get the assets from, how the properties are described. They have to be equally described. They have to be automatically readable, automatically displayable in different applications, and all of these things. And we have a good ability here to start that kind of like from scratch, because we actually really starting the ecosystem from scratch and can bring the players together. And it's in the beginning small enough that these kind of standardizations are easier to do. That's very hard right now to push standard through in the Ethereum ecosystem, because like it's huge. It grew a lot since back in the days. And when you combine these kind of standards with a common infrastructure, then you get like all of these interesting synergy and network effects where one can make like exchanges for these things. Others start to wear it. Games start to integrate those, because now they say, oh wow, it's valuable. People have it and people trade it. We could just like adopt that to our game. Why not? That might bring more users into our game. And certainly people are happy that they can take the clothes they bought here for $50 into their game and show it off there. And then you could even attach live market prices, even in game, showing them that this item right now is worth that much and was before that much. I mean, there's so much things to experiment around that. I'm really interested in seeing these kind of things happening. And obviously there's like a lot of statements, and funny enough, if you look in the fashion world, I mean, everything is going into more like the digital aesthetic. We have constantly this aesthetic between where you have the multicolor shadow pictures, where you have pink and then blue and all of this mix. A lot of brands start with digital Instagram posts and stuff like this. So it's all really moving in this direction. The direction is things we are talking since more than a year about. So it's really starting to come together, and a lot of people come to us, and it's very interesting, very exciting, and I'm really interested in seeing what's happening in the next year and two.
I think that during New York Blockchain Week on Ethereal, there was an art auction and there was a digital garment sold for like 10,000. Yeah, it was very cool.
It was very exciting. So it was basically, you could say, the first digital dress from the Fabricant. And for example, a group, or the first digital fashion house, how they call themselves, which we are in talks since like over 8 months. And it's very interesting to see this is really, the thing is, they came to us and said, hey, we would like to do this. They had no idea about blockchain. And so it was very interesting fit. And now when Dapper Labs made this as an example sale, I mean, it could have probably been bigger, and it could probably have been moved out of the art direction, because on the end, it's not really art. It's actually, there's a functionality to it. I mean, not yet, not in this case. It was a showcase. But the point is that these things you can wear, these things you can actually show off in your digital world. And that includes Instagram and our semi-digital world. And this is something which can have a life in the future in VR, which can have a live future in games. And it's the same item. And that's the most exciting things. So I definitely think this item will live in the future beyond just that auction and beyond that showcase here. Yeah. But it was a very interesting thing to see. And it's very interesting. I mean, I think right now it's funny because we have the fashion space, with the whole lifestyle space getting in touch with blockchain, and we have like done a big deal to do that, to raise that awareness in other projects in the space, some which are actually built on Luxo. And on the other hand, you have the blockchain space, which has no idea about that, no ever cared about fashion. And now they come together, and Ethereum is more of a blockchain weighted conference. So for most people, it was like, what the heck is this? If you talk to kids, if you talk to the Gen Z, for them it's totally clear, it makes total sense, For the blockchain people, they were also super confused when CryptoKitties and CryptoPunks came up. And that, in my opinion, was a good signal, a showcase that people do value digital assets and digital scarcity, especially when it's ownable and provable scarce. And translating this to fashion, I mean, this is exactly the missing piece why fashion could never have gone digital before, because it was missing that uniqueness. And blockchain actually gives it. And so, perfect match. I'm very interested to see this evolve in the next few years and months.
What about the general public who now tend to have some kind of skepticism towards blockchain, or just simply does not understand what it's all about? So how do you think this problem should be tackled, or the fact that it's actually built on blockchain should be avoided? Like, for example, we're talking to Stephen McKeon, and he said that the ultimate goal here is that people do not have to know how it works. They just need to know what benefit it brings to them. So what's your opinion on that?
Exactly right. On the end, I think the reason why we actually put so much weight also on showing how things work, explaining, explaining private keys, letting people back up stuff and so on in the right way. It's kind of like a learning, the whole world had to learn this kind of tools and how this technology works in order to build more and more tools and build more and more things. I think we're at the point where enough people have understood how the stuff works, and we can now move to the next level to make it disappear, and make actually use cases where people use blockchain. They will have the benefits, and they will really realize that there's something magical or different than before later on. But they don't immediately need to, it's not like showing the engine of the car before they can drive. So it will actually, the Web3 UX can be easier than Web2 UX. So far it's not. And so far it's way more complicated, but this will make a leap, and it's purely about the right standards. So I proposed a standard called ERC 725, which is identity, or is like your on-chain profile. I think this will solve a lot of the problems, because you can make the account more manageable, you can increase security over time. So you can start with low security in the beginning, make it more secure over time. You can attach information to your account, and you can let other pay gas, which is really one of the biggest problems of entry for blockchain. That you have to now somehow have Ether to deal with smart contracts. You don't even know what either is. So, but it's all a question of UX. And one of the things we are really working on is that killer UX. And we have a lot of ideas, and it has a lot to do with standards and doing it in the right way. And then blockchain disappears. The moment people will be able to move assets from one app to the other, to a website, to an exchange, to a game, that's when they realize, oh, there's something magical here, which somehow makes all of these systems work together.
Yeah.
Because before, they would have been very isolated. You have your stuff in one app, and that's it, and it's sitting there only. Once it moves to different places, that's when people see, okay. And fully right, it's about like letting blockchain kind of disappear. But at the same time, people will be very aware of it. It will be more natural. At some point, you just expect that it works this way, and you expect that like it should be based on blockchain in some form or another, because you see the benefits, and not that you think, oh my God, I have to now understand what's happening. Who understands email? Least people understand email, and everybody's writing constantly emails. Or who understands WhatsApp? Not many people do. It's about the effects, and once you see the effects, and especially the audience the Luxor network is for, the projects we will support and the things we build ourselves, they have to be super easy. Like, it's a non-tech audience. Funny enough, people say they're non-tech, but they're constantly on their phone in all kind of apps. They're pretty technical, in that sense. Just not that they know the nitty-gritties under the hood. But you don't need to know that in order to use it.
And speaking about token standards, so a lot of people are now trying to come up with their ERC20 or ERC71 for security tokens. And what do you think about this security token standards, like competition or even war? Is there any token standard that will actually be above Ethereum, or will still Ethereum maybe be the best blockchain for securities? What's your look about that?
There's are multiple points here. On the one hand, I would say there would be definitely multiple blockchains. Many will be based on the EVM. So there will be many Ethereum-like blockchains, which are not necessarily competition. Like Luxor, it's not a competition to Ethereum, the mainnet. It's an addition. It's for a complete different target group. The target group of Ethereum is cutting-edge decentralization. It's DeFi, is playing around with what is the most extreme possible in the form of how we can decentralize things. That's not necessarily the main thought for the lifestyle world, nor actually for the financial world. So there will be EVM-based blockchains around financial systems. There will be blockchains like Luxor for the lifestyle world, and there's already blockchains, EVM-based blockchains for the energy field. So there's a lot of these kind of, I call it domain-specific blockchains. They are all more working in concert. And because you can connect these blockchains either directly over bridges or through systems like Polkadot and Cosmos, where you can interconnect these blockchains and you use a third-party relayer, Anyway, you can move your stuff from one to the other. Should there be a need for it? It's not that things are like blockchains are isolated and totally untouchable in that sense. And in terms of the standards, yeah, it's a bit funny to see. When I proposed ERC20, it was the first smart contract standard. Was the issue number 20 in the EIP repository. And after that, we have seen a lot of efforts to standardize things. The earlier ones were easier. Many succeeded or somewhat succeeded. And then what happened is kind of like how it looks to me, like a standard war happened, like you say. Instead of actually discussing one standard and evolving it and improving it and to making the one which can be adopted by everybody, they just make a counter standard. so now this standard and the other, and then 5 others, and everybody wants to push theirs. And especially when we're talking about security tokens, and we were talking about these, 1400 and others, where I kind of helped a bit, but was more like I was not really part of these things. I gave a bit of input, but it's not my standard. But then there was the other standards as well. It's a bit funny to see because here it's more about all these projects trying to push themselves as, hey, look, we are the ones who did the standard, and that's why now we are the right place to do everything, and come to all to us and use us because we made the standard. Yeah. And that's actually the wrong approach. In my opinion, it should be finding the most common, valid denominator that works for all of them, and it should be a discussion. And there are multiple factors why a standard succeeds or not succeeds, in my opinion. And one factor is simplicity. Many of those standards really try to overdo things, and that's also due to the fact that you now have lawyers involved, and lawyers say, oh, this has to be in this requirement. It becomes this monster of a standard. And we have these funny things that, for example, in America, you need transfer agents to transfer securities. That's something which doesn't make much sense on blockchain because the blockchain is the transfer agent, so people can control their assets themselves. They don't need to call up a transfer agent and tell them, hey, can you please move my blockchain asset? Sure, did it. That's not how things should work in the blockchain age. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of trying to shoehorn in the old world and the old logic, which might not necessarily need to be built that way because the system itself is different. There are no clearing houses. There are no 5 levels of paper and Excel sheets which are shared or whatever. It's already automated in the bottom. So one big part actually with the securities is mainly KYC, being able to know who you transfer from and who you transfer to, and then what are the different rules based on who transferred it and who receives it. And there's super complex. So each security could have sub tokens. Some can be transferred early, some later, some have a lockup, some don't, some can only be issued so much. And you have all of these complexities. So it's hard to build this into a super standard. And we have now all of these competing one. And what I think will happen is we will see now a lot of financial blockchains, security blockchains coming up. They will compete. Some institutions will move there, some others there. On the end, they have to figure out a common interoperability standard for things. That's kind of what will happen. And this is through this experimentation, and that's important actually. Everybody immediately wants to have the perfect standard and the perfect system and the perfect one blockchain fit for everything. That's not how the world works. Things grow. All of these growing are learning. So yes, there will be a bunch, and there will be a lot. And through that, you figure out what worked better and what worked less. And then they have to again find together or not. And that's just the way how things evolve. And I think we are moving towards a multi-chain universe or multi-chain future, definitely. We are already there, but it will be way more clear that this is the path forward. And Luxor, for example, is one of those blockchains. In fact, for the most socially active crowd in the world. And probably the most fun things will happen there. And the cool thing is, it's also a less regulated space. If you're not dealing about financial products or energy certificates or whatever else is right now a government or entities for DAOs and stuff. If you just make fund tokens and items getting certificates as like one basic concept, or digital identity for digital items.
Yeah.
That's a totally almost unregulated space, and experimentation can happen here way more freely and way faster. And I'm very interested in seeing like how fast can this evolve, because it's in the more open space. And that's one of the biggest things of Ethereum, that like not everybody thought first about the law and then build it, because we would have never built anything. People built stuff and it was cool, and later we figured out, and people thought about, if we would allow put law here on everything, this is how it could work or not work. It's getting now all into nitty-gritties, and that makes it a bit like very tedious and very like cumbersome. I mean, I was just yesterday at a workshop with the EU Commission, and one of the banks said, yeah, we have built all of these use cases where we can transfer these bonds, or we can transfer these stable coins or these euros. That all works nice, but the legal effort we have to make and the legal cost is just so big that this is the big problem. And this actually, the legal stuff solves nothing, I mean, it's not a technical requirement to make this thing live or make this being used. It's purely like a baggage we now have to also glue on top in order to be fine, and that's it's a bit sad to see that. And that's kind of right now probably what stifles the most blockchain evolution in the whole world, is that kind of like law baggage everybody now has to attach as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabian, for being with us. We hope to have you more on our podcast. We will invite you all the time. No.
Do that again, definitely. There's a lot of things that are happening in the next few months and in the next year. I mean, I think there's a lot of things coming, and the focus of blockchain use case, also the focus of like the whole audience will shift, because right now the whole blockchain world is like very narrow group of people. It's a very tiny space, and everybody thinks we're the whole world. I mean, it's not the whole world at all. I mean, the ordinary person don't think blockchain, nor do they care. I've heard about Bitcoin, that's it. And one of the things that I think Luxor will do is to bring that into the awareness of the ordinary person in a way that they don't care much about the blockchain, but they care about the use cases that are not possible.
Yeah,
The ones that are not possible before.
That's
That's interesting. It would bring a whole new size and a whole new group of people into the space. And it's in fact will be a lot of very female-driven work as well, which is pretty underrepresented in the blockchain space so far.
all right. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us at Valley Tokenized.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch short versions of the video on Twitter.
And if you have any questions to Fabian, feel free to leave them in comments, and we will make sure that he answers them.